It was mid-October and I was out for an evening hunt. At around 6:15 I spotted this Sambar Stag about 250 metres away. He was feeding up through the blackberries towards the open pasture on the top of the hill. So I got down on my hands and knees and crawled towards the nearest blackberry bush about 50 metres in front of me. I knew if I could make it to there I would have a good chance of remaining undetected in behind cover for a further 100 metres. As it was very open to the next lot of cover, and to make things easier and less cumbersome, I left my pack and rifle behind, as I had no intention of shooting this particular stag. I then belly crawled to the next clump of blackberries that put me within 50 metres of the stag. It took me 20 minutes of very slow, methodical crawling whilst his head was down feeding before I was able to sit down in front of the blackberry bush and set up my video camera on the tripod and start filming, and that was at 6:43 p.m. His number one priority was getting in as much of the new spring growth as he could, and he was making the most of the new white clover shoots, just like the blonde wombat that was also enjoying the abundance of new feed. Through many years of fox whistling, I knew that I needed to be in front of the 1.5 metre high blackberry bushes to blend in and obscure my outline, not behind the bush looking over the top, as that would have had me silhouetted. I was wearing my olive green pants and top and also a face mask and gloves, and I sat with the video camera on the tripod in front of my face. I'm not a big fan of camo and don't wear it for several reasons. I like to be able to walk into a shop or a servo on the way to or from a hunt without feeling like everyone is thinking, "Oh, here comes Rambo." I also don't wear it from a safety perspective, as I would prefer to be seen by other hunters and not blend completely into the bush surroundings. Camo wasn't designed for hunters. It came about so soldiers were harder to see in the battlefields of war. The other reason is that I don't believe that camo clothing is all that necessary whilst hunting sambar deer, especially if you stay still and lower your profile. When you think about it, we humans are the only creatures that go through the bush in the vertical form. Every other creature is on all fours, except for roos and wallabies when they bound off if they've been spooked or alarmed. A sambar deer's eyesight is its weakest sense, especially in daylight. That's not to say that they won't pick up on your slightest movement. I have found as long as you remain dead still and not silhouetted, they will often look straight through you. Their hearing is excellent, aided by their great big table tennis bat ears, but their sense of smell is exceptional and is by far their strongest sense. I've seen them pick up the fresh scent of a human from over a kilometre away, so he must smell like dog crap to them. If they see movement or hear a noise that they are not sure of, they will often circle around to get a second opinion from their nose, as their nose never lies. For that reason, I work hardest at keeping my scent from drifting towards the area I intend to hunt. If that means backing out and coming from another direction, so be it. I constantly use a cigarette lighter to indicate the wind direction and the subtle changes in the thermals, as I know from experience that the deer will be long gone if they pick up on your scent. When the stag stared straight in my direction for a short period, I thought that he may have honked and taken off, but because I blended in with the surroundings and didn't move a muscle, he soon went back to feeding again. He glanced across occasionally just to make sure I hadn't moved and was still in the same location, as he would have been very familiar with these surroundings. With the tripod and camera in front of my body, he probably thought I was just another piece of machinery or equipment laying on the ground in the paddock. I could see that he had not long ago exited a wallow, which is common for stags to do before coming out in the evening to feed. Stags will often urinate in the water before wallowing. This enables them to leave a trail of mud and water droplets containing their pheromones and scent as it drips off their body and brushes onto the vegetation. They also do this to mask the scent of other stags that would have used the wallow as well. It is a bit like a dog peeing on a car wheel to cover the scent of the one that peed on it before it. I've been able to get very close to a lot of deer, not just sambar deer, by getting down on my hands and knees or belly crawling towards them, as long as the wind direction has been right. A mate and I crawl between two mobs of fallow deer 50 metres apart for half a kilometre for him to get a shot of the buck on the next flat. After I had finished filming and the stag had run off, I stepped it out to where he was standing at this point in time. This is where he had the big body shake and head shake as there were mud droplets on the ground. It was 14 paces or near enough to 12 metres from where I was seated. The stag was totally consumed with getting in as much of the new lush spring growth as he could, and wasn't concentrating on the blackberry bushes that he would have normally been feeding on a month or so ago. With the stag standing side on like this, I was thinking about where I'd place my crosshairs if I was going to take a shot. My preferred point of aim would be up the line of the front leg to the hump of the shoulder and down 100 mils from the top of the back. This shot would sever the spine if spot on, and if a bit low it would be high lung shot. If a bit back it would take out the liver, and if it was a bit forward it would hit the spine in the neck. All of these scenarios would likely result in a quick, clean kill. As the stag continued feeding below me, I gave a call on my homemade Sambar calf call to see what his reaction would be. He looked up towards where I was seated, but didn't bother coming over to investigate. Whilst the calf call had got his attention, it didn't bring him over to investigate, as he was more interested in filling his belly at that point in time. I knew with the direction he was heading that he soon would be out of sight from where I was seated, so I waited till all I could see was the tops of his antlers before unclipping the video camera and standing up. I could now see him clearly again, so continued filming as he fed his way further around the hill below me. At one point he must have heard a noise below in the gully. That caught his attention, so he continued to stare in that direction until he was satisfied that it didn't pose a threat to his welfare. When he lowered his head to feed, I moved around to the back of the blackberry bush I'd been sitting in front of, and now stood out in the open. This is a good example of how flexible they are in their body, where the stag has virtually got his nose directly in line with his spine, looking back over his rump. As the light was now starting to fade, I decided to move forward and let him see me and then see what his reaction would be. To my surprise, he didn't bolt and went straight into intimidation mode, with foot stomping and his head held high aggressively. He even took a few steps advancing towards me. He used what I call the silent signal that sambar deer use, where they raise and lower their tail to warn each other of potential danger close by. With the underside of their tail being very pale in colour compared to the rest of their body, is like someone waving a white flag. Next, he started looking for options for an escape route whilst he kept an eye on me. He knew that he'd been caught out and that he would have to make a run for it, so he scanned ahead for danger and trotted down the hill a bit before hesitating to look back to see what I was doing before making a mad dash for the nearest patch of scrub. As I was now standing in the vertical form, he was able to see my whole body from my knees up. This is where a face mask and gloves are of the utmost importance, as he would have seen me as a monotone blob with a single big eye, being the camera lens at the top. As he started walking down the hill, he continued to glance across to check that the blob hadn't moved. He focused on looking away and then a quick look back, trying to catch me out. Well, I hope you gained as much enjoyment from watching this footage as I did capturing it. Till next time, safe hunting.